By the way, everyone, you missed the rundown of Tricia's trip to Italy, which we probably should hit record on so that you could all be as jealous as we were of it.
Yeah,
but
I highly recommend starting a new job, being in seat for 4 weeks, taking a 2-week vacation, and then coming back to really start your job.
Just practice. That's actually something the market doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is the best practice.
It actually is a best practice. It allows you to take no responsibility in the first 4 weeks of your job, because what are you going to do while you're gone for 2 weeks? And then now, like, I have the knowledge of what's happening. I have knowledge of what I might want to do about it, and I can just jump in and go.
That is incredible. I love it.
From ABM to PLG, from Medic to MedPick, the world of business is constantly evolving. We'll cover the who, what, where, when, why, and most importantly, how you get the transaction. I'm Matt Amundson, and he's Craig Rosenberg. Let's get started.
All right. So we today have Tricia Gellman. Normally I do the lead in, but like I had to lead with your name because your background is amazing. And it's, it's a real one, everyone. So that's worth noting. But Tricia and Matt and I worked with each other at Scale Venture Partners. She was a EIR with us, and I actually had Matt and I had both heard of you, Tricia, before you started.
Of course.
And then, but I hadn't worked with you, and then we worked together for a while, and you were amazing. And just so it's funny because everyone asked me, I'm like, well, rule number one is we don't have anybody currently working with me on the show. We wait till they leave. So the minute sort of free, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have Tricia on the show. But I think one of the things that we always talk about is like how we see folks doing these amazing things. So like, we'd heard about you a lot. Drift was like a big one, sort of for your self brand, right? Where we heard a lot about you, and then we meet you. And you fell in that you fall in that category for us. You spent a lot of time at Salesforce. I think you did Checker in between that and Drift, right?
Yeah.
And now you are the CMO of Box, which is amazing, and advisor to a ton of companies. But the thing I really appreciated about you was you were like leadership. You advised folks on the gamut, the full stack, including things like leadership and just how to engage with the team in the organization, all the way across all the crazy amount of functions and responsibilities in a CMO's portfolio. Matt and I were just talking about it with another guest the other day. If you take a step back and look at the things that the CMO is responsible for, it's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts. I mean, I think this is like one of the fundamental challenges of CMO is that it's such a broad remit, and most founders and CEOs don't really understand it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think as a CMO, that's one of the biggest challenges of your job is how do you simplify it for the people that are grading you on like, are you doing a good job or not? And also, how do you clearly articulate what you're going to do and what you're not going to do?
Yeah. Another skill set of Tricia's.
Yes.
I'm always working on it, but yes.
Yeah, of course. It's a work in progress for all you guys. You know what I mean? But like that was incredible. So everyone, the transaction welcomes the legendary Tricia Gellman for Box. And thank you for coming on. We are going to kick this off with the big question that we have. And warning for everyone, Matt has a really good question. He called me 9 o'clock. I'm sorry, I had to give it out because you were so excited. He'll figure out how to loop in it. All right. So here's the big question, which is, as part of the pod, just a little bit of context for everyone. We believe that the go-to-market playbook, it's always evolving, but is changing a lot right now. So we're trying to figure out from guests like you is like, what is something or things that the market thinks they're doing right, whether it's an approach, methodology, tactics, et cetera, and they're actually wrong and they should be thinking about doing it another way. What is it and what should they go do about it?
Okay.
Go.
All right. So when I was at Scale, we kind of advised across a lot of companies, different sizes. And I've also worked public and private. And it doesn't really matter what size you are. I see consistently that people don't build the right relationship between marketing and sales, and they don't anchor on sort of like the right metrics and how they manage those metrics, and specifically pipeline. So when I was at Scale, we wrote like a little one pager, well, multiple pager on this pipeline management and how it can, like, doing it well will help you bridge marketing and sales together, which then gets you the velocity you need. And what people do wrong is they think, oh, we're managing pipeline, and they talk about pipeline all the time, and they have emails, and they have like a pipeline czar, and they have all these other things, and it's like great that we have all these dollar signs here because that's what matters. But in the end of the day, it's so muddy that they're not going to achieve any goal. So what I mean by that is like, oh, pipeline's great. Well, guess what? Like 99% of the pipeline you're tracking is expansion within your current customer base. And so if that's all you're looking at, you're never going to add enough new customers. You're never going to be able to expand customers later. Like, you need to break these things apart. Or like a conversation that I heard recently was, well, like the pipeline looks great, but actually that's because we don't need as much pipeline as you think. We have an SMB business, and it creates and closes in quarter.
Right.
That shouldn't be the conversation. The conversation should be like, here's what's happening with enterprise pipeline, and we need 5x coverage. And here's what's happening with SMB pipeline, and we need 2x coverage. And by the way, like the 2x coverage is only at 1, so it is red, and the 5x coverage is at 6, so like that's great. Okay, perfect. Or like how many deals are in that pipeline? Like enterprise pipeline is at 1 point, it's 150% of where it needs to be. But guess what? We have like the biggest deal that ever happened in the history of the company in there. And so like, no, we're not going to make the number. And 80% of the reps are going to like miss their quota for the quarter.
Yeah.
Because like only one person is healthy and hungry.
Matt,
I took a big deep breath to talk about it.
go ahead first, and then I want to dig in.
So one of the things that you're talking about here specifically is like, you cannot look at pipeline as a lump sum. At the very least, you need to be separating it by new business and expansion. And definitely you need to be expanding it by the segments.
Yeah.
So if you sell SMB, if you sell mid-market, if you sell enterprise, you need to be looking at those separately. And having a blanket goal from a coverage perspective across all of them doesn't make sense, because SMB deals close faster. Maybe you win more of them. Maybe you lose more of them. Enterprise deals close slower. Maybe you win more or less of those. You really need to go a level deeper into this stuff, especially if you've got like big outlier deals that are like, hey, our average deal size is 50 grand and we've got this one in there for $1 million. So let's all take a vacation because, we got all this great coverage from a single deal that may actually end up taking us 12 months.
Yeah. And when the end result of it is you talk all quarter about how pipeline looks great, and then all of a sudden you miss the ARR number.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, well, it's not so bad because it just pushed by 3 months. And you're like, hello, we missed the ARR number. This is a problem.
So there's the visibility, but then one of the things you talk about is just how you manage each other on these things. So like, and that's, by the way, that what I was talking about, like Tricia's skill sets, it's not like, part of it is like real management advisory, like how you go through these things. So I always like this part. So it's like, we just, like the visibility thing is important, but like if were you in sales and channel, and like, do you meet on a regular basis, and then like?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is that you have to understand your business, and like to what Matt was saying, SMB might close at a higher or a lower rate. Enterprise might close at a higher or lower rate. The other thing to factor in there, and the reason why I think this is so important for creating business growth velocity, is that who does what is going to vary as well. In enterprise, you may have the reps doing more of the pipeline creation, and then you have other roles that are assisting, like maybe BDRs. Whereas in SMB, maybe like marketing's doing 80% of the creation, and the AEs like have no help, and they're just closing it directly. So I think that's like an important thing, that you understand how your business functions, understand what you're requiring of everybody, so that everyone can have the right conversation on a weekly basis, at a minimum on a bi-weekly basis. And then you have the right people in the room so you can evaluate like where are we toward our goals for the coverage we need as well as the pipe gen we're doing to create coverage in future quarters. And then you can like as leaders say, you know what, like we're clearly not going to hit the pipe gen number for this quarter, but like more importantly, we need to hit the ARR. So what can we do as a team to like revive the dead or do whatever else it might be to like really double down to focus on just the ARR number and not the pipe gen number, whatever it might be. And I think this is where like you can build that rapport between the two teams and everybody has to be focused on the company goal and not their own little like checkbox of like, what's in it for me.
But do you guys feel like, so there's two things that I feel like I hear. One is the amount of, I was going to say negotiation, but I do feel like arguing about deciding how the pipeline number would be divided.
Right.
So I want to talk about that, and because one thing you said is that's how like we can work together, but like actually I hear a lot about just trying to get people to sign up for other numbers, that is a true argument / negotiation. Actually,
yeah, 100%. So I think there's a couple things. Like one thing is that I think in the companies I've advised and been in, the default is that marketing has their own dashboards and numbers and sales has their others. So that's why I'm such a big advocate on like meeting with finance, creating the numbers, everybody agreeing on them and going through this negotiation that you're talking about. Because if I'm looking at my pipeline and saying, oh, my goal is, 200K or whatever it is. And then sales is saying, oh, we don't have enough pipeline, but I'm saying I met my goal. Like nobody wins.
Right.
Like that's just a lose-lose. So you have to get to a place where as a company, you are looking at the same numbers, the same dashboards, and you're functioning off the same thing. Like that has to be a number one goal.
Yeah. And then do you use past data? I'm not worried. I'm actually not talking about this from a marketing perspective. I'm actually, because like when I look at how you would look at things, right, which was actually, it looked complex, but it was simple, right? It was. For example, I'm actually most concerned, I feel like the biggest issue I see from like a CMO is sales pipeline generation, right? So the AEs doing it for themselves. And I know that in your enterprise use cases, they would sign up for that. That's where I think a lot of the tension lies. And I'm trying to figure out how we could best help people figure that out. I mean, I think it has to be like a go-to-market management decision, honestly. Like I've been in different companies where like sales leadership is kind of has the approach like we don't need marketing. Like we know how to generate pipe. We're like 100% enterprise driven. Enterprise AEs know that they have to like go out there and go find their business. They have their territories or, even individual account names and they're going to go do it. And I mean, I would say that's a very short-sighted vision. I always kind of hate it when some sales leader stands up and says that because, marketing has to build the brand. Marketing has to build the thought leadership. And like, yes, AEs can go knock on doors, but in the end of the day, like the productivity for the reps is just going to suck if that's what that's happening. So I think you have to agree that from a go-to-market motion standpoint, you need to invest in some level of brand and thought leadership to help everybody achieve anything. And marketing's probably not going to get a ton of credit that's ultimately visible there, but like as a company, you have to fund it. And I think like there's studies out there that would show like, 20 to 30% of your budget from marketing should probably go into that. But anyway, we could debate that. At the end of the day, then you can break out and say, okay, like what is each group doing with like their pipe targets and numbers? And like some companies would say, like we are going to fund AE headcount, and that's just our premise. And some founders, like, they've read all the reports, like every time I add a head, it adds $1 million in revenue. So like, that's what I'm going to do. If that's the environment, then you have to divide the math and say like, we're going to have more pipeline from AE. Yeah. Yep.
So you have to decide with finance, with like, CS, whatever your like expansion people are, whether it's AMs, AEs, whatever, everybody has a different role, but like, how is this going to happen? And then make targets that are reasonable based on what you're funding.
Got it. Because like the second part to my question is like one of the things we've heard for the last 2 years is everyone's trying to get the AEs to prospect again.
Yeah.
And then they put out a number and it's like 40% of the pipeline has to come from the AEs. And these folks haven't prospected in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can we make that a build out? And if we look at things the way you're talking about, we can say, well, like in the near term, SDR, outbound, and marketing is going to have to do 90%.
Right.
But in the next 2 years, we want to get it to,
to 50% or something.
40.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the smart thing to do. And like, ideally you have numbers, right? There are companies out there that are going to be hearing this podcast. They have no numbers and they just have to like decide what are they going to do and what are they going to shoot for. And my advice for those people or the other group of people is going to be people who say like, well, we have tons of data, well, we don't believe any of it and it all sucks, which is everybody's problem.
Yeah.
But you just have to say like, I'm going to put a stick in the sand and this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do it for a minimum of 6 months. And if we consistently missing it, we're going to then be able to say like, hey, we tried to do this. This is why we had this problem, XYZ. Like, let's adjust. Maybe AEs don't have as much. Maybe marketing like overperforms, whatever it might be. And then just go from there. But saying you can't do it because you don't have the data, it's just a cop out.
Yeah. The other problem I see from a lot of smaller businesses is they are extending the definition of opportunity to artificially inflate their pipeline number. And what I mean by that is when I rewind the clock back to my days at Marketo in the early 2010s, in order for an opportunity to have been created, you needed a demo request or an outbound meeting scheduled by an SDR. That SDR had to qualify it for a set of criteria. Then that SDR had to hand it over to an account executive for that person then to verify that there was a deal that was real and there was a timeline and all that stuff. And then, and only then did it become an opportunity. And what I see now is like demo request occurs, it's an opportunity. SDR books a meeting, it's an opportunity. And so I think what we're dealing with like writ large is a lot of organizations that have very loose definitions around what pipeline is. And what I'm seeing consistently from earlier stage or startup businesses is, hey, our pipeline number is huge, but our win rate's super small.
Right.
And if you look at the root cause of that, it's because we are calling something that we used to call a meeting or a sales qualified lead or something else an opportunity. And that is negatively impacting what's happening out in the world right now because marketing is then like, well, I got my opportunity, so I'll move on and go get you 10 more that look just like that.
Yeah.
And the reality is none of these are real cycles at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I actually had a client that I was advising that kind of fell into that. They went to the board meeting and marketing's like, oh, I'm awesome. And meanwhile, like the close rate for the business was 7%. And so like, you do not want to have that be like your way of functioning as a CMO leader. You want to realize that like if the close rate is that low, then either in your case, you're saying like people are like naming things the wrong thing and or there's like bad management. I mean, there's a lot of companies that just have opportunities and it's like, well, how long have we had this? Well, it pushed 8 times and it was started 2 years ago. And it's like, it's not an opportunity. Like just, I mean, let's agree, like it's dead.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to pair opportunity management, like stage management, like what's the get into, get out criteria. And you also need to pick something that's real. Like a lot of companies say, oh, well, we had the meeting took place, this is really an opportunity, and then there's $0.
Right.
I mean, that's also a difficult thing to manage too, because there's $0, but like maybe it doesn't make sense to add $1. So you have to figure out where is the right place at Salesforce, which kind of shaped a lot of the way that I think about this.
Yeah.
We had like a stage 0 where like SDRs and sales would be working the opportunities. And then we had stage 1, which was like to hold the meeting. Stage 2 is what we built all our reporting off of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's where AEs were really committed that they were working an opportunity. And so to build close rates off of that made the most sense. And it was also close enough to the action that marketing would take that you weren't waiting like 6 months to a year to see what would happen. Because that's also the risk is if you move your reporting too far up the funnel in terms of the deal close, then like you can't really take the actions to fix anything because it's like it's too late once you get the data.
Yeah. My recommendation here is one, your organization has to get really tight around the definitions of what is an opportunity and what are the stages of opportunities. Two, you have to, as a marketer, and I've been advocating for this for the last year, you have to look a lot further down the funnel than you traditionally have. And I don't mean that from the perspective of running campaigns that are built to accelerate opportunities. We should all be doing that. If you're not, please get on that immediately. But to get a sense of what your real impact is, you have to understand how things are progressing through the funnel. Yeah. It's not enough to just say, hey, this channel performs well. It delivered, 40 opportunities in a quarter. If those 40 opportunities are never getting out of the first stage of opportunity, then the reality is that they were entirely worthless. And sure, you may be writing down someone's, demand gen quota as a result of that, but it's really not having a material impact on the business. And so for years, I've advocated for marketers to get closer and closer to revenue. I think that we're in a time right now where that is more important than ever. And it's not just good to put in a LinkedIn post, but it's actually essential to run a successful go-to-market motion.
Yeah. And I would say too, especially in the past couple of years where everything's been tighter, things have been moving slower, deal cycles have gotten longer. I think marketing has to be more aware of what's working, what's not working. That's where like a weekly, bi-weekly conversation, you shouldn't show up to have the conversation of like, what does the chart look like on the numbers? You should be showing up to have the conversation of like, what's working, what's not working, why is it not working? Like in the case of my client that had these really poor close rates, they were fielding lots of great opportunities in like an actual ICP. But the problem was that there was no action, whether it be on the marketing side or the sales side, to surround the account.
Yeah.
And so what they were finding is the person in the opportunity was the wrong person.
Yeah.
And then they would just dead it out versus saying, oh, well, we know that in order to close a deal, we need 5 to 7 people to be involved. So what is marketing's role in doing that? What is sales's role in doing that? And how do we actually like use these, what we were previously calling opportunities, as more sort of like intent within an account?
Yeah.
So that we as a team surround the account.
Yeah.
It was wild when back in the TOPO days, we had a SDR practice and a demand gen practice, and people would bring us in and say, well, I mean, there was folks where they weren't creating anything, but then like I would say 65-70%, they say, well, the SDRs suck.
Yeah.
Then you come in and fix it. And then we'd look, and the opportunity definition was not like codified. Meeting definitions weren't codified. And so like, of course they were going to fail. We had one rep who's like, I'll take everything and I'll clear it for you, instead of us saying, no, like we're trying to create opportunities that fit this, right?
Yeah.
And that, that honestly like sounds like, well, how would that solve? It gives everyone a North Star. Now marketing, SDR, they can go figure out how they can create the right type of opportunity. But when you just say, if you don't say anything and the SDR set meetings and whatever, and marketing creates this great amount of activity that gets translated into meetings, but they don't convert farther down the line, it typically comes down to folks not saying, well, look, if this has this, then it's an opportunity. If you don't do that, man, you're just going to have everyone's personal preferences in play and you won't know, right? So
yeah. Well, I think like one of the things here to just call out is everybody works to their goals. Like it always works. Like whatever the incentive is, that's what people work towards. So if marketing's incentive is number of opportunities, you're going to get a high volume of opportunities. If SDR's, incentive is number of meetings, you're going to get a lot of meetings. I mean, in the end of the day, you got to think, what are we trying to do for the business and how do all of these things align as well? Because if marketing's goal doesn't align to the sales and the SDR goal or whoever, is touching things, it all breaks down.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think, for years, people would ask me, what is your definition of an opportunity? Or what is your definition of a meeting? What does it take to progress something in a cycle? The reality is every business is a little bit different. The goal here is not to say, hey, our definition should match Salesforce's or Box's. It should be what's appropriate for your business. And the thing that I tell people is like, these definitions they're kind of like dieting. As long as you stick to it, it's going to work. It doesn't, it could be keto, it could be intermittent fasting, or it could be whatever. but whatever you stick to will work. And to Craig's point, that provides everybody with a North Star so they know what they should be working towards. It may be BANT. And I know I haven't heard BANT in probably half a decade, but that may be what's appropriate for your business. And if you're in something that's a little bit more velocity, where the deals close really fast and, hand raisers turn into contracts within, a matter of weeks, it might be something that's a little bit looser. So it just depends upon your business. And I think like looking to someone for a best practice, the best practice here is just have definitions, codify them, and make sure that everybody's playing by the same rule book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because you said it's about where you are as a business, because I met a couple reps, hung out with them at Dreamforce from
you did.
Your enterprise. Hung out with a lot. I love hanging out, they were enterprise-ish sales reps, and AI is how you will expand for these guys. They're like, well, we're in a weird spot because for years the company has the categories built, they can do BANT. So they would say, look, if there's no project or deal here, I'm cutting bait. But now that they're trying to sell AI and you've got buyers who are trying to sort through everything, you can't cut bait.
No.
Because you have to build on that. And that is a change in the business that needs to change the North Star and the way you track things, right?
Yeah.
That would dramatically impact the criteria of how do you move something from one stage of an opportunity to another. Maybe the company meets all the ICP and the person said that they have a problem that you can solve. But then in the end of the day, how long is it going to take to move through, and what is really a late stage opportunity versus not? I mean, if you don't have a company you're selling into that has an AI approval process and you haven't met that criteria, you're not selling any AI.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So I'm going to help transition here. Normally we'll just keep digging in. I do have more questions, but I do want to make sure, because it's aligned with the theme.
Yeah.
Changed. Matt, I'm going to transition to your big question for Tricia.
Okay.
And
all right.
Actually, honestly, to everyone listening, I'm actually excited to hear her answer.
Oh, all right. There's so much pressure here. There's so much pressure.
That'll be good.
All right. Yeah. All right, Tricia, you've been a CMO before, and in the weeks leading up to and in the opening weeks of starting a new role, whether it was at Drift or whether it was a Checker and now here at Box, there's an amount of preparation that you get into. There's data that you look at. There's customers that you want to meet. There's peers within the organization that you want to align to pretty quickly. What is different about your approach to coming on board at Box in 2024 than what it was when you were maybe coming on board at Drift or when you were coming on board at Checker? Because the landscape has changed. So is there new data? Are there new personas that you're aligning to? Is there new levels of research that you're doing as you're coming on board? And some of it may just be, your own personal growth, but is it different in 2024 than it was, say, in 2017?
I think because of where Box is, the opportunity at Box is to take the content management category, which is not a fast growing category. And let's just agree, it's not the sexiest thing, and transform it with AI. So Craig's comment about AI previously is highly relevant, but there's a lot more I feel like I need to do in understanding the product and meeting with the product team and understanding the roadmap and understanding what is the customer adoption and the customer feedback. I think it's really important as a CMO that you meet with customers and you really hear firsthand, why do people like your product? Yeah. But even more so now in this role, I feel like our opportunity is to totally disrupt the space with AI in the category of content. And so are we really delivering? Is the product roadmap, have we checked 2 out of 10 features? Where are we and how is this really folding out with the product team? I think has been really important for me to understand. And then not just what are the customers saying that are using it or thinking about it, but what are the metrics that we're looking at for that versus the metrics for a true marketing metric. of like, are we driving pipeline, et cetera? It's like, do we actually have active users? And if not, like, what are we doing? And do I own that, or does someone else own it? Like, where does this all sit for the overall business success?
But
it's go ahead, Craig.
No, because Matt has been huge about talking about product.
Yeah.
And talking about how buyers now are, their needs to really dig into the product are like, we used to, I remember when I first started, everyone's like, oh no, I can't talk about that. Yes, first let me ask you all these questions and then do all these things, and then you can see the product. And now that's moving farther up. And like, but also how we market, et cetera, like Matt talks a lot about, like, no, I'm like deeply vetted with the product team. So is that new?
I don't think it's new. So I believe, because like, I feel like my Salesforce career, like I worked for a while in marketing before my Salesforce career, but in my Salesforce career, we were creating the whole category of SaaS.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of category creation. And I think if you are trying to change a full-on paradigm in a business, you end up having to talk more about your features and your product and what it does, because like just talking at a fluff high level, like people aren't going to move. Yeah. And so people have to see it to believe it. It's kind of like if you're creating a new category and you're doing something dramatically different, you have to look at like the crossing the chasm. Like no one's going to go across the chasm, and even your early adopters are going to act more like they have to cross the chasm because you're asking them to change. And so you look at like, what is it that I need to do? And that might mean like talking about product more. I think AI is crazy. Like, I don't know, it's all like in its own category because AI is so noisy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think then you end up as a marketer and a salesperson trying to figure out like, what are you going to do? I could go on the street in San Francisco right now and ask 5 people, like, do you understand what it is? And probably 5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if I ask them, like, do you know what, like a natural language processor is or something, they might look at me like I was speaking in Chinese.
Right.
And so like everyone feels like AI is here, so they have to say, yes, I get it. But in fact, they don't. And so if you're trying to market yourself as like this disruptor with AI, or like we add you all this value because of AI, it's so noisy. And you have to figure out how can you like get the message through? Because if you just say AI, then also no one hears you.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is an interesting topic, not AI specifically, but the topic around, a deeper alignment with product. And it's kind of not new, but it is new because it's different. Yeah. I've always tried to align myself with the product leader just because, to get product marketing fully up to speed, to understand roadmap, to understand product launches, et cetera, et cetera. But today I feel like there is this thing that's sort of, it's on the tip of everyone's tongue, but not everybody's necessarily saying it out loud. And that is, if your product is just fundamentally better than your competitor's product, people will buy it and they don't really go through your funnel. There's this thing that's sort of happening where, if I'm looking for, say, hey, I'm not, but like if I was looking for the next great marketing automation platform, well, I just call you and Minnie and Maria Pergolino and Sydney Sloan and just be like, hey, what are you guys using for this? Right. And it's like, I wouldn't go through their funnel. I just find out from you guys what you're using. And you'd be like, oh, it's awesome. It's a better product than what, maybe Marketo or HubSpot are. I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm going to go through a sales cycle and go evaluate it myself. And it's this weird, it's not a dark funnel. It's like a non-digital funnel where it's like there's a reputation of a product, and like the users of the product are advocating it for a way that's very different from the way we thought about like customer advocation or customer champions in the past. It's like they're not getting on LinkedIn or X and saying, hey, this product rocks, but they're having these conversations amongst their peer group, and people are seeking out their peer group for answers because either they don't want to go evaluate 5 or 6 vendors, or they just want to cut to the finish line immediately and just say, yeah, just give me the best one. And I don't want to worry about learning about a new category.
I think this is new and this is different. I think since COVID, and maybe it's because of the evolution of the technologies and things like that too, but like everyone's holed in their little space during COVID. And then we couldn't do in person, we couldn't do anything. And then now I think post COVID, there's a lot more networking and influence that's happening, like not going onto the sites, not being marketed to, not being in the funnel, but just like, okay, like this is what's happening. And if things are really working and the product's really performing, then you get a lot of this sort of actual word of mouth, but it's word of mouth that is like C-suite level. It's not word of mouth, just like, oh my God, everybody in the world is talking about things.
Yeah. It's C-suite, and I think it's also board level. Like I've never, like I experienced in my last few companies, like the board being like, hey, have you seen this product? It's really great. Your metrics around this aren't great. This could be super helpful for you. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go check it out.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like this is back to like we had this huge conversation about about pipeline and measurement and these dashboards and sales and marketing, but like this is where brand matters a lot.
100%.
You know, 100%. And I think this is where, like in my work at Drift, like we really played on this. Like Drift had a great brand, but it wasn't with the C-suite. And so we basically changed how we talked about the brand to move it to the C-suite. And then from that, we unlocked like an entire enterprise go-to-market.
By the way, when did the industry start using the phrase C-suite? Because it's so used now, but when I first heard it, I'm like, that is incredible. I remember Ted Purcell, you know, he's got that big cackle laugh. He's like, the C-suite, man. He's just laughing. Such a killer term. But anyway, sorry, I digress. I think that's actually, you guys are onto something really interesting. So one thing that, if I may, that I think is really interesting in your role now, Tricia, is that there's a function though. That's like, you can narrow that thing down. You're at Box now and everyone can use it.
Yeah. I mean, this is my challenge at Box. We do like 100% PLG self-service buy for one person all the way up to large enterprise. And you have to figure out as a CMO, like, what are you doing for who and where, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's so different, you know. I feel like when there is this hidden, you know, I used to say vertical SaaS has the hidden advantage because, well, not hidden, but they have to like dig so deep into one vertical that it allows them to be the marketer and the salespeople to be real experts. But I would say the same thing about companies that are built around a function, and how they support that function. That's another advantage, because now when you build community and you build these referral loops, you have, you know, a set of people that you can literally say that, you know, the CFO for, you know, like, you know, NetSuite and Intech, you know, it's like many knew exactly what the stakeholder map looked like. I think in the case of Box and Notion and, you know, some of these other folks where it's like, sort of wrapping your hands around that and creating real network effects with, you know, a particular group is much more, it's harder.
Yeah.
It's harder, but I think like that goes back, I think, to one of the key roles of leadership across sales and marketing is like really being clear on who are we going after, why are we going after it, and then like, how are we going to go after it? You know, like back to my Drift day again, it's like when I got there, like they were unequivocally the leader in conversational marketing. They created the category. But the person who was buying the product was like not even a senior manager. It was a manager in a marketing organization, like 3 to 5 levels down from the CMO. And then there was a lot of churn. And then you're wondering like, well, why? Because actually you're selling a product really low in the organization. You're selling at a price point that's really low compared to like actually the value you're delivering. So no one believes that it's delivering that value. And you're not having a conversation with the right people. So like really aligning between sales and marketing, like who do we need to go after? What do those people care about? And how do we reframe the conversation was like the key pivot that we had to drive.
Huh. That's so interesting.
Reminds me of a conversation we just had, Craig, where the discussion was around the concept of a blueprint. That everybody on the executive team could get aligned around. Not only what is the product that we sell, who do we sell it to, but what is the customer journey? How do we go take it up in the organization? What are the steps towards expansion, et cetera? and just getting everybody on board with that, and then sort of mapping for an earlier stage company, but mapping roles and responsibilities and how you're going to go higher around that. I thought it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. But even, I mean, at Box, I think understanding the customer journey, because like now if we want to sell AI, I mean, content management, like the senior leaders in a company, like they kind of approve everybody to use everything. But if you have the advantage that you have unique AI and the ability to unlock information out of your content, it's not just like, oh, I need to store my content now. It's like, how do we actually drive fundamental process and decision making in a company?
Yeah.
And so it might be different buyers, and maybe like how you like wrap people into the buying process. And so, you know, we need to look at that. That's one of the things we're doing actually, is what is the journey and who's in it, and are we messaging to the right people, and do we have the communities for the right people, so that we can be successful.
Yeah. But I in the time we have left, if I took this, like the way we started this conversation, which was so we just identified this is different. But like, so Matt's going to start something new, Trish, you start, so I'll put it to both of you. Like, what will you do around that? If that's one of the most important ways that we get deals done, like I think we just had we just talked about the community building and those things, but like, how would you A, identify that going in, B, like set yourself up to foster that going forward as you guys go start new gigs as CMOs at new companies? Like,
I think partnering with CS is more important than it used to be.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because I think like you really have to understand like how happy is your constituency. Like, yes, we have product market fit. Yeah, we're like selling things off the dock like super fast, but why do people like the product? Do they really like the product? When you go out and meet with them, can you consistently get them to say something that is truly valuable? And if not, like, how do we rally the forces of like sales, marketing, product, and everyone to like make sure we double down and build the thing that like people really are going to go talk about?
Yeah, totally agree with that. For me, I think like one of the things that I want to get off the ground as quickly as possible, and we sell to very high level people within an organization, is to do everything I can to start laying the tracks for a physical community. Just because look, I've always respected the work that Latany's done at 6 Sense. I think that there is something truly magical to that, that I would like to try to replicate. Also, things that Craig and Scott did at TOPO were really magical. And I think that there's something to learn from that. Because that was true for TOPO as well, Craig. Like, people talked about TOPO, and the brand was sort of known as the place where you go to get information, not just from your team, but from the other members of the community. There was a reason why when you guys put on your annual summit, people like flocked to it, and you're like, this advisory firm, and there's 1,600 people coming out to an event in San Francisco, right? Like, it's because there was this cool factor and this community factor, not just, hey, I'm going to go get, sort of shuffled into this little space and get a sip of coffee and then try to get out of there as quickly as possible. But because I'm going to go there, it's going to be a great experience. I'm going to meet some really interesting people who have really interesting ideas that I can learn from. So that's what I'm going to try to pull off. And it's going to be really hard, but all good things are hard to build.
Yeah, sounds great.
Look at you guys. Yeah, we'll have to check in and see. I mean, that's ambitious. I love it. Okay, so if we in the 1 minute we have left, if there was anything that we didn't cover, we won't be able to cover, but it would be interesting to hear, because it feels like we figured some stuff out in the last 15 minutes. And the way I think about it was like, is there anything that's still, like, we just uncovered some different stuff. Is there anything else that's different that we need to account for that we could bring up with 30 seconds left and talk about next time we hang out?
Okay, buzzer beater. Go, Tricia.
I mean, I still think like product marketing and the way that you message is like, you have to get it right. And I think it's even more important now than it was before.
See, you were, I mean, that was the bomb drop. That's great. By the way, Can I just add to that? Why is it so hard to hire product marketers?
Role definition is like too wide. And I think like what you really need, people need to be clear on what they really need.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that. Two tidbits in 37 seconds. Tricia Gellman, folks. All right, this was awesome. It was great to catch up. By the way,
It was so great.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun, and it was a really good conversation. That's what we're trying to do here at the Transaction. So thank you. Thanks for making this happen.
So
Thanks for
amazing.
having
Thank you,
me.
Tricia.
All right.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, great to see you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Transaction. Craig and I really appreciate the fact that you've listened all the way to the end. What are you actually doing here? For show notes and other episodes, please visit us at thetransactionpod.com. Like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other place you get your podcast from. Either you have walked away from your podcast device, or this is playing somewhere in the background. Someone in your house would really like for you to shut this off now.